of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, and I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. 'Cause you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Yes, you are perfect in all of your ways. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways. Yes, you're perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, it's love so undeniable. I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still and to love. Love, love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways. Yes, you're perfect in all of your ways. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Hallelujah.
Okay. All right, you guys ready for a great service? Yeah, we do. We have some brothers here that are going to give us a couple of messages. We've asked them to talk about leadership. Our first brother comes from Pennsylvania, and I've only been in fellowship with him for about a month and a half, but I love his heart. Had a chance to sit up with him one evening and speak for a few hours on some intimate things and some other things relevant to life, and have really grown to appreciate Brother Karlos. I'd ask him to come on up now, and he's going to give us a word from Yahweh's word. So we're really excited. Make him feel welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Lower this a little bit. Dwayne, I just want you to know I've never spoken a word in my life, so that's very generous of you and very ambitious, but it's always been a lot more than just one word. So.
All right, let's not give you double charge.
Okay, thanks. Oh, with the microphone, yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I officially get started, let me just properly introduce myself. Again, my name is Karlos DelToro, and I'm here with my wife Zeta, and we're blessed by Yahweh to worship together with a small home fellowship group with folks in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, and a couple of other locations. So we're very happy to meet some new folks today and catch up with a few old faces as well. And we're very grateful to be here, and we're really gratified to see what Almighty Yahweh is doing, and we expect some great things to come out of this. So I thank Yahweh for that. So let me get right into the message, and we'll get you out of here by 5 o'clock like we promised. Let me start up by asking a question, and that question is, are you a leader? Are you a leader? You know, the answer might surprise you. Everyone is here today because the theme of this conference resonates with leaders of all types. So I ask, what or whom is it that you lead? Do you lead a congregation? Maybe a home fellowship? Maybe you serve in some sort of a leadership capacity at work? Or perhaps you lead in some capacity at home or within your communities. You see, it doesn't really matter what the setting is because the dynamics are the same. So what I want to talk about today for just a few minutes is I want to talk about what we can learn from Yahshua's leadership style. We've been hearing some great things so far at this conference, and many of the thoughts that came to me as I was developing this are thoughts that have been already alluded to or brought up directly. As a matter of fact, it's interesting that this morning, no joke, Dwayne brought up several verses with regard to the foot washing service and the one from John 4 about the Samaritan woman that were passages that I was actually going to cover, so I had a lot of last-minute scrambling, right? But even with that, the repetition is never a bad thing, so I'll probably weave a little bit of that into this brief message. What is your leadership style? Do you lead in a gentle, calm way, or are you the kind to sort of charge forward and maybe kind of bully people into submission, right? We all know leaders of both ilks. Do you take the approach, do as I say, not as I do? Or are you the first one to model the words and behavior that you want to instill in others? Do you act with willingness and determination? Or are you the passive type who basically is kind of waiting for something or some message or something to fall from the sky into your hands? And we all know the feeling of both if you've led anything or anyone. A leader always must ask him or herself these questions and more if they're to develop a leadership style that is going to get outstanding results for the honor and glory of Yahweh. Now, the biblical model for ideal learning, I've always felt, is that of the student and master. And that's the model that's actually shown us in the scriptures with regard to Yahshua. This was particularly true in Jewish settings. So if you've done any study about how the Jews used to teach their folks, it was a disciple-master type of relationship. There were schools, for example, known as the Beit Midrashim, where they would have a master and then they would have the students. So you may have heard in the scriptures of the sons of the prophets, and this is just that kind of a style. And Yahshua modeled that with his disciples. His relationship with his disciples back then was that way, and I believe that that same relationship exists today with his disciples today. So we're going to turn to him for some guidance on leadership, and we're going to look specifically at his life and his way of doing things, his words and his actions, and we're going to glean 5 basic qualities of leadership that I hope that we can take with us in a very practical way and use that when we leave here to model our own leadership, okay? So we're going to look at 5 broad qualities of leadership that we can learn from the life and the words of our master that will make all the difference. Here's the first one. A leader is what? And we've heard this already, and we've heard this many times, right? A leader is a servant, first and foremost. And Yahshua typified the concept of the servant leader. So if you look at Isaiah 53, you even hear about the Messiah referred to as what? The suffering servant, right? Above all else, he's a servant. So many leadership models out there are based upon who is the strongest, right? Who is the one that can pound you into submission, or military-type leader, etc. But very little is spoken of with regard to the servant leader. And we hear that term so many times in our society anymore that it's almost lost its flavor and its impact. But it's something that for us can never lose its flavor. A true leader must first and foremost be a servant, and that's borne out in the scriptures. As Brother Dwayne was speaking about this morning as he was referencing John 13 and the foot washing, Yahshua, who is the master, was the first to set the example and kneel down and wash the feet of his disciples. And in doing that, he set an example for them to follow, okay? But also, if we go over to Mark chapter 10, let's take a look at something there. We're going to go through just a few scriptures today so that we can find their application. So Mark 10, beginning with verse 35. And there come near to him Jacob and John, the sons of Zebedee, 2 brothers that were his disciples, right? Saying to him, Teacher, we would that you should do for us whatever we shall ask of you. And he said to them, What would you that I should do for you? And they said to him, Grant to us that we may sit one on your right hand and one on your left hand in your glory. But Yahshua said to them, You know not what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink? You're asking for something that, be careful what you wish for, right? Or to be baptized with the baptized that I am baptized with. In other words, are you willing to go through the things that I have to go through for the sake of for getting what you ask? And they said to him, We are able. It's always easy to say that, but not quite easy in the doing, right? And Yahshua said to them, The cup that I drink you shall drink, and with the baptism that I am baptized shall you be baptized. And by the way, history bore out that they did. But to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it is for them for whom it has been prepared. So Yahweh decides that, right? And when the 10 heard it, they began to be moved with indignation concerning Jacob and John. And Yahshua called to him and says to them, You know that they who are accounted to rule over the Gentiles domineer over them, right? They have this domineering way of leading and of serving, well, not of serving, but of leading and of getting things done. And their great ones, the Gentiles that is, their great ones exercise authority over them. But it is not so among you, but whoever would become great among you shall be your servant. And whoever would be first among you shall be bondservant of all. For the Son of Man also came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. So he's trying to teach them the first and most important and basic lesson, that if you truly want to follow in my footsteps, or you want to have that kind of authority and that kind of bearing, you have to be willing to do everything that I do, starting with my example, which is serving. You have to be a bondservant for all. Is that something that we, as leaders, in whatever capacity you're exercising, is that something that we're willing to do? Because that takes humility, right? And by the way, humility, what is really the main thing that characterizes humility? Is it not the willingness to think there's a possibility that we might be wrong about something and that we have to listen to others? So service involves a lot of things, and that's a topic for another day, an entire sermon in of itself. But the first quality of a leader is that the leader is a servant. The second thing is that a leader is an example, and I already alluded to this. A leader shows the way by setting the example. In our society today, people who consider themselves leaders, quote unquote, right? Whether they're in government, whether they're in industry, in private sector, public sector, doesn't matter. Folks who consider themselves to be leaders don't lead by example oftentimes. They have the wrong idea what leadership is all about. The leader shows the way by being the first to set the example. Intentions, my friends, and words are not what gets things done, right? Action is. And that action has to begin with a credible witness by the leader. So going to the verse that Dwayne was referencing this morning over in John 13, let's go to John 13 and we'll begin reading with verse 12. John 13:12. So, of course, Yahshua went and after dinner, he washed everyone's feet. So it says in verse 12, So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and sat down again, he said to them, and look at the question that he asked them. He says, do you know what I have done to you? Do you understand what it is that I just did here? Do you think I just washed your feet, or is there something more that I'm trying to show you? Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and rabbi, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, because remember, a rabbi in that society was upheld in great esteem. So you call me rabbi, you call me teacher, and well, but here's the thing. If I then, the rabbi and the teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Truly, truly I say to you, and by the way, whenever you see Yahshua say truly, truly in the scriptures, it's as if he's saying amen, amen, it's true. Truly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, neither one that is sent greater than he that sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. I speak not of you all, If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them, if you do them. So not only must we learn those lessons, but we also have to put them into practice. And if we're supposed to follow the example of our master, then we have to follow his leadership style, which says if you're going to get others to do something, you have to be first willing to do it yourself. Being example relates to integrity. And that's a really key lesson. The biblical concept of integrity conveys the idea of being whole, something that's whole. In other words, you're not divided in your attitudes. You're not divided in your thoughts. You're not thinking one way here and then behaving another way there. In other words, it's not hypocrisy. It's being whole, entire in the way that you do things. And it's important to remember this because a lot of times folks, and this is kind of human nature, right? We tend to protect our reputation. But what is reputation? Reputation is what you do in public, right? But the reputation is not the biggest thing. What really matters is your character, is your integrity. And the character is something that you are in private, right? So integrity, if you're going to be an example, you have to be a person of integrity. You have to be a person who's whole. And you have to be willing to exhibit that in the day-to-day. And you can't hide that, right? If you are, either you have integrity or you don't. And when you show by example, it's going to come out one way or the other. So the second thing is that a leader is an example. Here's the third. A leader is an influencer. By definition, a leader influences. A leader persuades. Because Yahshua was a true leader, others wanted to follow him, right? If you are the type of leader who is leading with integrity, who's leading by example, who's leading with service, you're not going to have to force people to do anything, right? They're going to want to follow you because they're going to see that character in you. They're going to see that there's something special in you, and they're going to want to be like you. That's why the master-student relationship was so conducive to learning. Because when you see someone that's modeling integrity and justice and equity and all those good things, you want to be like that person. I don't know about you, but when I was a boy, I did a lot of, I was sort of a goody two-shoes, okay? But the reason for that was not because of anything special in me. The reason for that was because I really wanted to please my parents, at least up to a certain age, right? I wanted to please my parents. So for me, it was important for me to follow after them because they were, in my view, they were decent people, and I didn't want to do anything to shame them. I wanted to do something to make them proud of me. So I view this as a very similar concept, that when we view our master, and our master is just and good, and there's everything beautiful about that master, you want to be just like your master. So the good leader is going to influence, and that influence comes not just in the person's words, and especially right in our day and age, words don't mean a whole lot, sadly. Okay? It used to be that a person's word was their bond. Sadly, that's no longer the case, at least in many cases. But the truth of the matter is, how a person acts is going to make all the difference, and it's going to make you want to follow them. So a leader influences and persuades, and there are many biblical examples. Yahshua was so effective because he knew how to influence people to do the right thing. He was a master at getting to the heart of knowing what people needed or what they felt, and then suggesting a course of action based upon the needs that they were trying to meet. For one example, I'm going to turn to Matthew 14 briefly. Well, actually, we're not even going to go to read it there for lack of time, but you all know the account. Consider the feeding of the 5,000. in Matthew 14, and there are other passages, parallel passages where that account appears. He feeds the 5,000, and what makes that really interesting? The fact that he fed 5,000, well, yeah, that was right. Everyone marvels about the miracle, and they should, because it was, in fact, a miracle. But do they understand that it was of equal importance what was happening in that situation? These were people with hungry bellies, right? And that hunger is a metaphor. I mean, it was real, right? They were actually hungry. But I see that as being more than just hunger. It's a metaphor for all the things for which people hunger. It says that people there were being healed. People who were sick were being healed. People were being restored. You know, Brother Dwayne spoke this morning about ministering to the needs of people. And it says over in one of the companion passages, over in Mark 6:34, is a very curious note that says that Yahshua had compassion on them. When he saw the people, he had compassion on them, it says, because they were as sheep without a shepherd. It's very interesting, that metaphor. They were as sheep without a shepherd. It's kind of an allusion to what you see over in Ezekiel. I want to say Ezekiel 34 or so, where you have the evil shepherds who are taking advantage of the sheep and not fulfilling their responsibilities to care and feed them. And it's the exact opposite of that. The good shepherd sees the needs of the sheep and puts them above himself. You know, you even see that in the Gospels where he talks about him being the door, right? He says that he's the door for the sheep because the shepherd would literally lie down. I mean, he meant that quite literally. What you would do is you would enclose the sheep and you would set up some rocks as an enclosure, kind of a border around the sheep at night. And in order to protect them, you would lay down in front of it. You would be the actual door, so nothing got in there to take care to go at the sheep. You literally protected them with your very life. And the good shepherd does that. And the good shepherd notices if the sheep are going astray. He notices if one's missing. He notices if one is sick. He notices if he has to go and take special care and goes after the one, right? Even though he may have to leave the 99 on the side. Because the good shepherd senses that. He has their best interests at heart. So Yahshua, when he did that, again showed an example that in order to lead people, you have to influence them. And because when you do that, it's showing that you have their best interests at heart. You ever heard the expression, and I've heard this a number of times, you know, reading different coaching literature, but there's an expression that says people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Have you ever heard that? Right? People don't care. Think about that. It's kind of trivial, right? Trivialized, but it's not trivial. It's a profound thing. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I find that that's absolutely true. There are a lot of folks out there who want to be known as great teachers, right? But that doesn't impress me. What impresses me is what is the intention behind their teaching. Is it self-aggrandizement? Is it so that people can look at them and say what great teachers they are? Or is it because they truly, genuinely care for the ones that they're trying to teach? And obviously, we should follow the example of our master and be like the latter. What about number 4? A leader is a decider, right? A decider. You know, maybe a decider / problem solver, but a decider. True leaders are decisive. They know that they have to have the best information available to them, and they try to seek out the best quality information, but also they know that they cannot afford to wait until every T is crossed and every I is dotted, because sometimes you just got to take action, right? Leadership is not an exact science. Ultimately, the decision to move forward on a particular concern is based upon a foundation of faith. And for that, I'll turn to Matthew 17, beginning with verse 19. Matthew 17, 19. Then came the disciples to Yahshua apart and said, why could not we cast it out? The context is that the disciples had been trying to cast out a particular demon, and they were unable to do it. And he says to them, you know, they say, why couldn't we do this? He says to them, because of your little faith. For truly I say to you, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you shall say to this mountain, remove from here to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible to you. So leadership involves making decisions also. But you don't have to go through all kinds of ramifications, right? You get the best information possible available, but then you decide. And the key here is what? Is faith. Faith in Yahweh, faith that you understand His Word, that you've taken the time to study it, that you know what it is that you're doing. But ultimately, you have to decide. And faith is definitely a matter of action. And if you're going to lead, you're going to have to make decisions from time to time. We were hearing about that this morning. And some decisions are going to be pleasant, and others are going to be unpleasant. But you make them, because you know that you have to do them for the greater good, right? So a leader is also decisive. And finally, and personally, one of my favorite qualities of leadership is that a leader is an encourager, an encourager. And you might put in parentheses there, a counselor, a coach, right? A leader is an encourager. And this one, to me, is one of the ones that is most lacking in our society. Because so much of what goes for leadership nowadays is about getting things done at the expense of people. I have a big problem with that, whether it's out in the business world or in the religious world, right? I believe that you can be efficient with things, but you cannot be efficient with people. And this is something that it's refreshing to hear the kind of things that Keith and Dwayne and Hector have been talking about and others, because you cannot be efficient with people. When you try to be efficient with people, you know what I mean by efficient, right? You just, you deal with things in a very harsh, quick, brusque way just to get things done and to tie up the loose ends. You can't deal like that with people because life is messy, right? We all know this. In very few instances in life are things black or white. There are a lot of shades of gray, a lot. And if you don't believe that, and you're not yet, become a parent. You'll see there are a lot of shades of gray, right? And if you try to control that, they were asking a question during one of the sessions, for those of you who weren't there, have you ever tried to control your children? Or, that doesn't work, I promise you. You cannot be efficient with people. So when you try to be efficient with people, so much is lost in the translation. Do you lead by pulling or pushing? If you're pulling, you're trying to control. You're not, if you're pushing, you're not trying to lead. What you're doing, in my opinion, if you operate under the principle of pushing, just understand that that's not true leadership. Now, by the way, admittedly, it is true that there are times when a good leader must give those under his or her charge a nudge or two to get moving, right? That we all know that this is the case, especially if you've been a supervisor or something of that nature. Sometimes you got to give a gentle nudge, and maybe sometimes even a really tough shove if you have to. But that should be rare, right? That should be the exception, not the rule. True leaders, in my opinion, draw others to them by clearly articulating a vision. And then, of course, leading by example, pointing the way, and then making themselves available if any obstacles present themselves along the way. And then they get out of the way and let people go. And they encourage them along the way to succeed. And if they're running into issues and problems along the way, they step in because of their experience and their wisdom, and they try to give them what they need to help them to make better decisions. But a good leader must encourage people. A good leader must go beyond the black and white issues. And if you have to stop the world for a couple of seconds and miss a deadline or whatever, you do that because you want to take care of the heart of the individual, which is always going to be more important. Because if you lose that, the ultimate goal of what you're trying to accomplish is really beside the point. This is why the kind of things I'm hearing here are really encouraging to me, because I've seen too many examples in my walk with Yahweh. I've seen too many examples of folks in the religious world that try to be efficient with people, and it's ugly. And people go in directions where they ought not, in many cases, in response to that. And I want to see less and less of that moving forward. And if we can eliminate that to the extent possible, I'm all for it. You got to love people. That's got to be, we talk about love and we talk about it in very nebulous terms, but I'm trying to bring it a little bit more concretely. This is one of the ways in which you love people. You encourage them. You walk side by side with them. Coaching is very near and dear to my heart because that's what a coach does. A coach goes side by side with a person and helps them through difficult times, and helps by asking a lot of questions and investing in that person's life, helps them to find the right way and get them back on track. I believe Yahshua was like that, and that's demonstrated in the scriptures. His disciples are like that, and I believe that we also have to be like that. There's a concept that those in ministry for a while are familiar with in counseling, in biblical counseling, which is referred to as nouthetic counseling. And there's a lot that's involved in that, but at the heart of it, it means that it says that the counselor must confront people, but that's not confrontation in the sense in which people, that negative sense of confronting with, the intent to, be overbearing or something. No, it's confronting an issue head on. Not the person, but the issue that's at hand, but doing it, and here's the key, with love, and most importantly, with the best interests of the person involved. Not to save face and to look good and to, do the photo op, but to make sure that that person is okay. Looking out for the best interests of that person. And that's at the heart of encouragement. You're giving, what does the word mean? Encourage. Encourage, to give someone courage, right? It's a way in which you can get to the heart of that person and help them through. Dwayne talked about the Samaritan woman, and I won't turn there in John 4, but that's exactly what Yahshua did with that Samaritan woman. And he knew the ugliness that was going on in her life, right? As a matter of fact, it's interesting. He asked her the question. He kind of, he knew it, right? He said, go and call your husband. And she said, well, I'm not married, right? I said, well, I know this one's not your husband because you've had 5 husbands, right? In other words, he knew exactly what was going on in her life. But far from standing there and judging her and making her feel like trash, which undoubtedly she had heard from other people before, instead, he tried to help her to see a better way. And by taking that gentle, encouraging approach, he was able to make a greater impression, and she went willingly and published this renown about. So we have to be encouragers. It's time for us, my friends, to have courage. Will you step up and follow your master's example and be a leader to those in the circle of influence in which Yahweh has placed you? I believe that's why you're all here today, and I'm encouraged by that. And if you're going to go in that direction, then praise Yahweh. You'll never regret it, I believe. It won't be easy, by the way, but nothing of true and lasting value ever is, right? Okay, may Yahweh bless you, and thank you for your attention.